Okay, so so we've got tools up here, selection tools to select your shapes. We've got drawing tools. We're gonna be mastering the pen tool in this class, but we're not gonna get to it just yet. We're not gonna be working with the type tool just yet, or the line. So what we want to get to for drawing for this assignment is we want to focus on using the shape tools. And there's not a tool called shape tools. It's a tool called the rectangle tool that you should see on top of a stack of shape tools. If you hold down on that tool, you'll see the whole set here. Then I can move to the tear off and click that, and I'll have a floating panel here. And I've got my rectangle tool selected, and I can start to make a background like a sky with my rectangle. And by going up to the top corner of my artboard and clicking and dragging down in a diagonal. And right now, based on the fill and the stroke, what colors do you think this rectangle is?
White.
White. It's a white. It's filled with white with a black outline stroke. That's the default design colors for in Illustrator. So if I click outside, you can kind of see that I can use my selection tool to select and move the object around. I can also use the selection tool to select the object so I could change its color. I've got swatches, my swatches panel up here, so I can just click colors from my swatches that I might want to use. Swatches are great to use because if you're going to print, the colors that are in swatches for a print document are going to print accurately what they say they are. So if this says it's green, it's going to print green, and so on. Right from the properties, as soon as you have an object selected, you are going to you're gonna have context sensitive options come up in properties, and one of those is the appearance panel options are going to come up, where you can also access swatches for the fill here by clicking there on the little color swatch, so I can choose a different color here, or swatches for the stroke, so I can click and choose a color for my stroke, like orange. I can also adjust the stroke weight from the appearance section of properties, make it thick. So I've got a big frame, like I'm looking through a window now. If I don't want the stroke, I can turn it off. If I want to control the stroke from the bottom of the toolbar, I can click the stroke to the front, and then I can click none to turn it off, like that. Okay, so let's see what else. Okay, so there's my sky. We're going to be using the shape tools. So I can use maybe the rounded rectangle and draw something out. So let me just, you can deselect by clicking outside, or you can use Command-Shift-A to deselect, the shortcut. On a Mac, Control-Shift-A on Windows, of course. And I'm just going to choose a swatch color for like a land mass. I can choose a color by selecting a swatch, or you could choose your own color by double-clicking on the fill or the stroke, depending on what you're coloring. And then I can use this slider. By default, it's a hue slider set to hue. You can drag this slider up and down to choose a specific color along a spectrum. That would be selecting a hue. And then I can drag this circle around in this field to alter the value of that hue. So I can intensify the color, or I can dull it out or darken it up, and change the color that way. Beware of exclamation marks. If you see an exclamation mark appear, that means that the color that you've selected is out of gamut. That means you're getting an out of gamut warning, meaning that you can see the color, usually it's because the color is way too intense for a printer to be able to print it out, or it's a very specialized color that only your monitor can display, and most other monitors aren't going to display this color accurately if you're creating for the web. So in general, you want to avoid the exclamation marks. You can do that by just readjusting the color, or by clicking the exclamation mark or the swatch below, and then Illustrator will choose what it determines is the next best color that's within range, that will be accurate, will print accurately or display accurately on other monitors. So I'm going to go with that color, and now I'm going to use the rounded rectangle, which you get the rounded rectangle tool in the advanced toolbar. You won't find it in the basic, but it's okay because you could still make a regular rectangle into a rounded rectangle. So I'm just clicking and dragging out my shape, and then I can use my selection tool to actually adjust the corner radius or radii by hovering over or dragging on these little, I call these corner knobs, these little circles. You can drag inwards to widen my corner radius, or I could drag all the way out and make a regular rectangle. So that's why you could start with a regular rectangle and then just adjust the corner radii knobs and adjust the corner radius. So maybe I want to make something that resembles a hill. Can make it look like a Super Mario Brother hill. You guys remember Super Mario Brothers? Or are you guys all too young for that? And then if I wanted to adjust one corner at a time, I could, let's see, if I click and release, notice how I clicked and released on that one little corner knob, so that one's highlighted. So then I can just adjust just that one and make that flat. Or
can you do that again, please?
Sure. Let me go back. Now it's okay. So if I want to adjust just one corner at a time, I can go to the corner knob, click, and release my mouse, and see how that one little knob is now highlighted and the rest are just normal looking. They're not highlighted.
Yeah.
Now I can drag it again, and it's only adjusting that one corner. So here I'll do that on this side too. Click and release, and then I can adjust them. And you could select more than one together. So if I wanted to adjust these two, I can click and release and then hold Shift and click and release. Now these bottom two are both selected and these top two are not selected. So I can just give a little bit of a round edge to that one down there. So that's pretty cool, huh? Okay, so there's something there. I could, well, let me move on to make something else now. I want to put a gradient on this sky. So I'm going to select the sky, and instead of a solid color, I want a gradient. So you can do that first by getting into gradient mode, and you can, and notice there are these three mode buttons at the bottom of the toolbar: solid color mode, gradient mode, and none. So I can turn the color off by clicking none, and I can switch into gradient by clicking the gradient, but it's going to default to whatever your previous gradient was, or if you have a new document, it's just going to give you a grayscale gradient. But if I want the color that I've already selected to be in my gradient, I can choose color there. And then I can use my gradient panel, which I got, remember, under window in alphabetical order, where how all the panels are located, to bring that up. And then with my gradient panel, I can just drag the fill color and drop it right into the gradient slider, like that. So now I have a color that I want. You can also do that with the swatches panel. You can drag in colors like this. If you just click a color from swatches rather than dragging and dropping it into the gradient slider, then it's going to go back to solid on that color. You got to drag it to, I can drag it from the fill here if I want that color. If you want to remove colors from the gradient slider, you can click on the color stop. You can click delete or you can click on a, you can click and drag a color off like that. If you want to add a color, I can hover under the gradient slider and click to add a color. And I can, it used to be that you could select your color stop and then you could go into the, double click on the fill and choose a different color this way from the color picker, and that then it would add it to the gradient. But now, since their last update, Adobe changed it so it makes everything solid. So now if I wanted that color in my gradient, I could drag it back in like that. But it's kind of annoying that they took that away. Normally with the sky, you'd have a darker color on top and it would kind of blend down. You can swap the order of the colors. I can drag this over here. Maybe I've got too many blues going on. But I kind of like how that looks there. So after I add my colors here, you could also change how the colors are blending by dragging on the little diamonds and dragging on the color stops. But then you'll have more room to work with if you switch to the gradient tool. So the final step after you get your colors set up in your gradient panel is to switch over to the gradient tool, which you find in the toolbar. You can click on that gradient tool and then you see a big gradient slider that you can adjust with more room to change how the colors are blending. And you'll see this gradient gadget here that resembles and it reflects the gradient slider in the gradient panel. I can rotate it, but what I prefer to do is just go outside of the gradient gadget that comes along with the gradient tool and click and drag to redraw the gradient. More exciting things happen that way. So you just click and drag. If you want to if you want a straight line gradient, then you can hold Shift. The longer you drag, the more gradual the colors blend together. If you do a short drag, you're gonna have more dramatic change. That could be cool for like an ocean scene with like the ocean horizon. But if I want this to look like a sky, I would go up like that, higher, something like that. Okay, now I want to show you maybe how a way to make clouds with shapes. So I'm gonna go to my ellipse tool, which I could use here in the set of shapes. All of these are shape tools except for this last one here. That's the flare tool. That'll give you lighting effects. You can use that layered with shapes if you want. So I've got my ellipse tool. Oh, maybe I'll make a sun first. So I'm gonna hold Shift to draw out a perfect circle. Ooh, it kind of looks like a moon now with it's got the same gradient that's on the sky. That is a linear gradient. If I want to switch this to radial, I could choose radial. And then I can alter this gradient to be more like a sun or a moon. I think I'll do a sun. I'll make a real cute landscape here. Okay, so I could drag in yellow, I could throw out blues, just throwing blue in the trash here, sorry blue. You could also double click on the color stop and then adjust the color sliders to change the color that way if you like. Like, you know, dragging towards the colors that you want. So I got kind of an orange there. And then maybe I want to just spread this out a little bit, adjust the diamond out. Okay, so I've got a radial gradient going on. Now if I go to the gradient tool, let me zoom in here so you can see. Then with the gradient tool on the radial gradient, I can kind of move it around. So it could be kind of highlighted more on one side. I can redraw it as well. But if I hover over the gradient slider here, I can move this around to make it look really three-dimensional, like a ball. Have it kind of darker on one side if I want. And then there's the star tool here you can play with. So far I've been showing you just dragging to make shapes, so I can click and drag to make different shapes like this and make those really cute cliche stars with the star tool, the 5-pointed stars. But let's say I want the rays of a sun. Then in that case, I can, instead of clicking and dragging to draw out the shape, I can single click anywhere, and then I can set parameters, numeric parameters. You can do that with any of these shape tools. So maybe I want a 20-point star. So I change the points to 20, say okay. And then that looks more like a sun, a cute sun. So I can scale that up. And you see that's in front of my sphere here. It looks like a sphere because it's a radial gradient. If I want this to be behind, well, it'd be easier if I just select the sphere with my selection tool, and I can right click and go to arrange, bring to front, or you could go to object, object, arrange, bring to front also from the object drop down. And then I can just kind of line them up like that. And if you want to be sure that they are centered to each other, you can select one object, hold shift and click the other object, and automatically when you select more than one object, the align panel options will pop up in your properties. If you want to bring up the align panel, it's located under window in alphabetical order as well if you want it floating. But I'm just going to go with these options here. It's quicker. So you check your align options first. It's set to align to selection, which is good because these objects are selected and we want them to center to each other. And then you have the horizontal line center option and the vertical line center option, and this is only the first row of align panel options. If you click on the dot 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 of any of these little panel options that come up in properties, it'll bring up the whole panel, so you have all the options there. Okay, now if I want to be able to move the sun around as a unit and not accidentally take them apart like that, I want to group them. I'm going to undo that. Thank goodness for Command Z or Control Z on Windows. So I want to group these two. So I want to select them both together, click on one, shift click the other. They're both selected together. When they're both selected together, you can move them around as a unit, but they're not really stuck together. So I always have the danger of accidentally messing it up and taking them apart. So just to keep them stuck together, I can go Object, Group, Command G is the shortcut, Control G on Windows. And so now if I can deselect by clicking outside and click, and it's always they're gonna be, when I'm using my black arrow, the selection tool, I'm always gonna be able to select them together as a unit with one click.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
When I click, so I click on my sun and I did the gradient, the yellow as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I click on my star, it changes the gradient to the same gradient that I used for the sky. So how do I get it to change to a yellow, like the most recent color?
That's weird that it went to be the gradient of the sky. So let me try to recreate that. So you could use the eyedropper. So if I have this star selected and I take my eyedropper tool, which is in the coloring area of tools here, and I eyedropper the sky, now I've given the same gradient to the star. But if I want this star it's selected, if I want it to have the same gradient as the sun, I should be able to select my star and then take the eyedropper and click the gradient on the sun, and then it should give the gradient that you click on with the eyedropper to the selected object. Does that work?
Yeah, it works.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so maybe on this shape, I want to distort it a little bit and make it look less like a Super Mario Brother mountain and more like a real mountain. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You could squash it disproportionately by, that could be one method of working, and stretch it. If you want to scale proportionally, you can hover over any of this is a bounding box, what you're seeing here. And these are the little handles. You can hold down Shift and scale like that. One thing I forgot to mention was zooming in and zooming out. I use Command plus a lot to zoom in. It's gonna zoom in on whatever's selected, or Command minus to zoom out. But you can also use the zoom tool, which you can get to by pressing Z. I also use the space bar to move around in my document. I love that feature that you hold the space bar and it toggles you into a hand tool, and then I can click and drag to move around. But let's say I'm zooming in. You can zoom in by clicking on whatever you want to zoom into, and then if you hold Option, you see a minus and you Option click, or you can click and drag down to zoom in, or click and drag up to zoom out. Sometimes when you're zooming, you can get yourself lost. You can be out in left field, and this happened to me when I was new to Illustrator, and I felt like I needed a GPS to find my artwork. I was like, where is it? I was like using my hand tool and I wasn't finding it. Well, if this happens to you and you're lost from your artwork, never fear, just use the view drop down and you'll see that there is a fit artboard in window, or fit all in window. It's like when Dorothy clicked her heels together 3 times and said there's no place like home, it's gonna get you there. There's also a keyboard shortcut you can memorize that will save you. Command 0 on a Mac, Control 0 on Windows, and we're back. No place like home. Okay, but I was gonna talk about distorting your shapes to make them look more natural. Actually, it's hiding under a tool. The tools that will do that are hiding under this tool that's called the width tool. And the width tool is good for adjusting stroke. So before I get to distorting the shapes and making them more natural, let me actually show you something else that's going to lead into that. So I'm going to start with building with shapes to make more interesting, unique shapes. So the ellipse, for example, I want to make a cloud first. So I'm going to go with my ellipse tool, got my ellipse selected here, and I'm going to go back to default for the colors. So there's a little default button here that lets you set a white fill and a 1-point black stroke. Just get back to default. And then I'm just going to build a cloud by stacking ellipses, just drawing out ellipses one after another and building a cloud. Oops, I covered that star up. Let me just, you can also, if you don't want something, you can select and press delete, your selection tool. So it might be easier to build my cloud if I don't have the stroke on, so I can kind of see how it's forming. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click, Shift click to select multiple objects. A faster way to select multiple objects is to take your selection tool and drag a marquee over all of those objects. But the problem is I've got a sky here that's getting selected, or if I drag here, it's going to actually move my sky out of the way. Well, then I can drag a box around those shapes like that. But if you just don't want your sky to move around, you can select your sky, then go to Object, hover over Lock, and choose Selection. Command 2 is a great one to remember, or Control 2 on Windows. So now the sky is locked. So now it's not going to move around on accident. And I can take my selection tool and click drag to draw a marquee that touches all of the shapes. And they're all selected, so I can control them all together. And I can click on that stroke option and just click none to turn it off. And then I can click outside and kind of arrange my ellipses. You can also duplicate objects. One way that I really like to duplicate objects is to select the object, hover over it, like you're going to move it, but instead of moving it, you're going to duplicate. You just hold down the option key and you get a duplicate icon. Then you drag with your mouse and release your mouse and then release your option key. And so that's a quick way, and then I can kind of adjust the size of this one and play with my cloud formation here till I get the look that I'm going for with this as some kind of cloud. Okay, so let's say I go with something like that. Maybe make this a little bigger. Maybe one more here, or here, maybe here. Okay, so maybe I do want my stroke though, so I'm going to select them all, and then I want to put my stroke color back on. So I got stroke in the front, make it, and then what I want to do is I want to combine all these ellipses into one single cloud shape. So you can do that with a really nifty tool called Shape Builder, and the steps to using Shape Builder are select all the objects that you want to combine, and then you take your Shape Builder and you just click, you just hover over shape areas and you click and drag, and it will allow you to combine all of these little overlapping areas and simplify the shape. So instead of having a bunch of ellipses, now I have a cloud just going over it all. Okay, so I can do that, and then I can let me just play with the stroke now. So this cloud has a black outline. If I want to make this look more like a hand drawing, get the respect of drawings on paper, I can kind of do that with this tool called the width tool that allows you to change the width of your stroke and make more of a hand drawn pen and ink look. So with the width tool, I've got the width tool selected. It's right here. It looks like an upside down mustache. And the Shape Builder tool is what I use to make the cloud. Combine the ellipses. It looks like kind of a sideways snowman that's just combining circles to make a new shape. With the width tool, you hover over the path and you can click and drag outwards to make the path thicker in places, or you can click and drag inwards to thin it out in places so that you have variable width to your stroke to make a more look, give it more of like a hand-drawn look. Clicking and dragging outward, and if you make too many and you want to, and it looks a little messy, you can always select one. Let's see, select one and press delete. Select them by clicking on them and then press delete. Let me just add one here. You can make the line get very thin in places. Okay, so if I'm happy with that, then I can just duplicate this cloud out by option dragging, and you can, let me just option drag another one. You can also right click your selection and go to transform and reflect it along the vertical or horizontal, and I'll say okay. Well, maybe I don't need this big star that looks like Super Mario Brother world. And then I can create a sense of depth by having the clouds kind of bigger on top, and then duplicating them and making them get smaller as they get further away. Or maybe this one will be something like that. And then now let's move on from the width tool. If you notice it has a little triangle in the corner, that means you can click and hold on it and see that there are a whole slew of other tools hiding under it. And these are the tools you can play with and use to distort your shapes and make them look more natural. So the top one I really like is the warp tool. I'm going to click on the tear off and take that warp tool, this first one here, and it gives me like a marking tool that I can change the size of by holding Option, and you'll see a little L appear when you hold Option, and I can drag to the right to widen it, or I can drag up to make it tall, or up in a diagonal to just make it bigger, up in a diagonal, or down in a diagonal to make it smaller. And then I like to select the shape first so it isolates the warping to just that shape. If you don't have anything selected, I believe it will warp everything together. Maybe not. No, actually it would. It's just that my sky was locked. So if I did, like if I was using my warp tool over here, nothing's selected right now. It's warping both the sun and the cloud. I'm going to undo that, Command Z. I want to isolate my warping just to this landmass. So I'm going to take my warp tool, and then I can kind of click and drag and pull the shape. And if I want like a bigger, if I want to affect a bigger area, I can make the tool bigger and just adjust it. If I want more little nooks and crannies, I can make the tool smaller and kind of adjust and make more texture by just tugging on the edges to make it look like a more natural landmass here. Make it smaller. Go down here like that. If you want to make sure that your tooltip is perfectly round, you can double click on any of these tools, starting with the warp tool over, and then you can set the width and the height to be matching, to be the same, so it's a perfect circle. So I want this to be like 1 inch by 1 inch. You can change the intensity, and then I can say okay, and now it's a perfect circle. If I want to adjust the size of it without distorting the shape and keep it as a perfect circle, I would hold down Option and Shift together. Shift constrains it to always be a perfect circle. Okay, now let me go ahead and do maybe like some water perhaps. Let's see. So I'm gonna adjust this. Maybe I'll unlock my sky now so I can adjust it. So I'm going to go to Object, Unlock All, and then my sky's unlocked. I can adjust that. And I can make another shape, another rectangle to be water, because we're trying to build a background, midground, and foreground. And maybe I want the land to be in front of the water, so I can select it, right click, go arrange, bring to front. And maybe I want some transparency in the water, or if I want to create a reflection, for example, I could duplicate this landmass by Option dragging, and then I can I like to kind of distort it. I could right click and go to transform and reflect it, but I'm gonna just drag from the top of the bounding box down, because it doesn't have to be exact. It can be distorted because it's a reflection. Let me just move this off the edge a little bit, and then I can play with the opacity of this shape. So while it's selected, you'll see opacity options here in the appearance section of the properties panel, and I can bring down the opacity and see how it blends with the water. So that's kind of nice. Maybe I want to create like a tree branch or something in the foreground, so I could take my rectangle tool and draw, let me see, draw out a rectangle, and I'll make it like a dark brown or something. Maybe put a gradient on it, so I could drag dark brown to this gradient and throw out these blues and put some lighter browns in there. And you can double click this and lighten this brown up a little bit. And then you can use the warp tool to warp the shape. So I could take my warp tool and make it more, hold option to change the size, and then I can kind of drag on this shape. Actually, I should make sure that's selected and then drag on it to adjust it. And if I want to really work with it, make it look like a tree branch, I could make my tool even smaller by holding option and dragging down, and increase the intensity by double clicking on the warp tool and bring up the intensity. Like 80, so I have more strength. And I can drag, really click and drag like I'm painting right into it. Kind of really make it look natural, like it's got lots of little branches coming up. And I could zoom way in here and then make my tool smaller by holding option and dragging, and then make like the smaller detailed branches. Little branches here and there. And then I could try with the selection tool, can select, and then I can hover right outside of the bounding box. Can you see that? When you're hovering right outside of the bounding box, you get a, can you see what kind of tool that is? It will rotate, right? And if your bounding box is not showing, just go to view and check that show bounding box is, or you'll have to check that you have your bounding box. Like if you don't see your bounding box, you can go to view and then show bounding box. See, if I go hide bounding box, now I won't see my bounding box. Then my selection tool will only select and move and duplicate. But if I want my selection tool to also rotate and scale, I want to bring up show my bounding box. So with view, show bounding box, and then I can rotate this and kind of make it look like a branch hanging down in the scene. And then I can use my warp tool and make this bigger and kind of like play with, whoa, that's, oh, too intense. I can bring down the intensity now to 20 or something, and kind of, let's see, pull this out. And now I need to make my tool smaller because I kind of messed this part up. And actually there's the direct selection tool that you can also use to get you out of a bind if you need to. What's great about the direct selection tool is it allows you to select individual points and move them around. So like for example on my sun, if I want to change the lengths of these sun rays, let me bring my sun, well I'm going to send this cloud backwards by right clicking and then going arrange, send backward, but I'll need to send it backward a lot to get it behind the sun rays. So I can go arrange, send to back, and then I could select the sky and then send the sky all the way back. Send to back goes all the way back. Okay, then I can take my direct selection tool and click on an individual point. See how in order to do this you have to click and release. Now just that one point is selected. the rest are hollow, and I can drag that point to change the length of the rays, or click on an individual point, drag it out. Oops. To change the length. So down here I might have made some, I could adjust here by selecting, click and release and drag, and I can adjust the shaping here by moving the points around. Clicking on the points. Notice when you have curves, you'll have these little guys that are called handles that are there to adjust the shape of the curves. So on anything that's round, any point that's holding a rounded shape, you're going to see handles that you can use to make those adjustments. On just straight lines and corners like the sun rays, you're not going to see any handles on the points. But on like the cloud, it's hard to see on blue. I probably should have used something else. So here, I don't know if you can see, but I can also change the color of my layer by double clicking on it and choosing like a lighter color, light green maybe. Then you can see the paths better maybe. So I can select a point and you can see these handles, they're like seesaws that you can use to adjust the shape of the curve, and moving the points around helps to change shapes. So you can do all of that. You can adjust handles and move points around with your direct selection tool, the white arrow. So that's what we're working on. Let me just adjust this gradient a little bit. Can go that way or this way. Any questions? So we're working on creating a landscape with a background, midground, and foreground using the shape tools and tools that you can use to distort the shapes. And then when you're done, remember you can turn in the Illustrator file for regular credit. Or you can go file and save as and save a PDF for regular credit. Do a PDF version. That's a portable document format. And you can turn in the PDF or the Illustrator file for regular credit. And then remember, for extra credit, if you want extra credit, you can go file, export as. Use artboards to trim off the edges. PNG is a great format. Export, screen resolution, I'm going to make it art, and transparency is fine, and I can say okay. And then I have my files to turn in, and then you just go to Canvas, you go to assignments, you click on exercise 1, and you click submit assignment. And if you're doing the extra credit, you're going to want to submit both files together. You don't want to submit one file and then come back another day and submit the other one, because it will end up overwriting your previous submission. So wait until you get both files made and then submit them together. So I'm going to click choose file. And then I'm going to choose the file, my folder for the class. Let's see, where am I here? So I'm going to choose the Illustrator file first, or the PDF. I'll just go with the Illustrator file and open. And then I'll click add another file to get the extra credit. And then choose file button. And then the PNG for extra credit, the raster file. So I got the two files loaded, and now I just click submit assignment. And it's submitting, and yay, I get confetti because I turned it in on time. So you get a celebration if you turn in the work on time or ahead of time.